I'm so excited that you're back with us for another segment of Meet My Mississippi Authors and Artists. And today we have someone special with us, another author. And like I said, I try to let them introduce themselves. So today we have with us
R.J. Lee.
Wonderful. From?
I'm originally from Natchez, and I live now in Oxford.
Okay, wonderful. I always try to go back and say, where did I meet this person 1st, and where did that journey start? The first time that we met, was it Barnes and Noble event? Was it the Barnes
I think so.
Okay, a Barnes and Noble author. No,
Yes.
It wasn't.
Was it? It was further back than that?
Lawful School.
That's right.
It was an art fair or something
Right,
like that.
that's
So
right.
that's been when my very first book came out. That was like 2008 or something.
It was at least 10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So we hit it off and we talked and
Right.
everything. Now, fast forward, what's going on? This is your latest book. Let's start there first and say, tell me the name of that, and then we're going to get your history.
Sure. The name of this is Grand Slam Murders.
Okay.
It's part of a new series from Kensington. The series is the Bridge to Death mystery series. And the type of bridge that it is not a footbridge or a river bridge, it's the game of bridge. So each one of these murder mysteries has some relationship to the game of bridge.
Okay.
And my pen name is R.J. Lee, and a lot of people have enjoyed this mystery since it's been out on January 29th. It's done very well in the state of Mississippi.
Okay. It was on the Mississippi Reads list for so many weeks, right?
About 2 months.
Right, absolutely. I saw that post on Facebook. I'm like, go, my friend, do it.
Yeah, it was a good feeling.
So, yeah, it is. And,
Yeah.
and then just the fact Mississippi Reads, it's just like we want to get it out there. So now let's go back. What is your background? Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? Where did you go to high school? Graduate from high school?
Right. Well, I was born in and grew up in Natchez.
Okay.
And right there on the river, and both sides of my family were from there. And I went to school and graduated from, it was then called South Natchez High School. It's
Okay.
now just Natchez High School. Then I went to college at Sewanee, the University of the South. It's in the mountains of Tennessee. It's a liberal arts school. And I wanted to be a writer like my father had been in New York. And I decided that I was going to major in English, which a lot of writers do. And I graduated in English with a BA. And I was able to study creative writing under Andrew Lytle, who was then the editor of the Sewanee Review. And he had been writing for 4 or 5 decades before I even got there. So I think I got a good liberal arts education, which enables you to roll with the punches in life.
Right. So what did your father write about? What type of books did he write?
My father was a fighter pilot in World War II.
Okay.
He flew P-38s in the Pacific Theater over places like Guadalcanal. He was decorated. He got the Distinguished Flying Cross. And after the war, my father got a job in New York writing fighter pilot stories because at that point, a lot of people wanted to know how we won the war, both over Germany and over Japan. And he got a job with a publishing company called Fiction House, and they did what is now called pulp fiction because it was printed on pulp paper.
Oh my
That's how it
goodness.
got that name.
Oh my goodness.
And he not only wrote fighter pilot stories, but he did detective stories.
Okay.
And when I was a little boy and I found out that he'd been a writer and was able to read some of his detective stories, I thought, well, it'd be really neat to write mysteries. It took me a while to get there, but
Right, now you come full circle
yes,
with it.
yes.
Okay.
And actually he wrote under the pen name of R, initial R, Keene, K-E-E-N-E, Lee, and I'm R.J. Lee.
Oh my goodness.
So
love
that's
it.
kind of an interesting, as you say, coming full circle
It is
situation.
a literary family too. Now give us some Natchez background. Natchez is like, what was it like growing up in Natchez, and a little history of Natchez, growing up in Natchez?
Well, Natchez is the oldest city on the Mississippi River,
Absolutely.
2 years older than New Orleans.
Yes.
And 3 years ago, it celebrated its 300th anniversary.
Yes.
And not many cities in the country can do that.
Right.
It is a very, very quirky, layered town. I can say these things because I grew
you're
up
from
there.
Natchez,
I'm from
right.
Natchez. There are a lot of people who claim they're related to this and related to that and built this, and There's a lot of history there. Of course,
Yes.
and there is important history of the country because a lot of times people have referred to Natchez as the 14th colony because it was right over there in the southwest corner of the Florida territory, and the only route from Natchez was through to Nashville through the Natchez Trace.
Absolutely.
So it was just a tiny little island of civilization in what is sometimes also called the Old Southwest.
Right, because Natchez under the Hill was kind of known as that time Las Vegas kind of place.
It is.
You know?
It was the old waterfront,
Yes.
and it was just wide open. It
Yes.
was, I mean, anything you wanted. There was horse racing, there was gambling, there were ladies of the evening, and a lot of that has just been washed away by the Mississippi River. There's one street left that has a number of old buildings that have been created, turned into restaurants and bars and B&Bs. But it was a wide open frontier town for a long time. And Natchez throws a party at the drop of a hat.
We love that.
You know, they are willing to do that. There's so many festivals. A lot of people think of the pilgrimage when they think of Natchez, spring, but they have the Jim Bowie Festival, they have the Wine and Food Festival, they have the Natchez Literary Festival, the Cinema Festival,
Right, everything.
the Music and Opera Festival, and that goes on throughout the year, except August is too hot to do anything anywhere.
Now, what were those plays during the old time pilgrimages? They would have certain kind of plays or something, pilgrimage plays?
They're
or-
called tableaus.
Okay.
The French
okay.
word literally living pictures.
Okay, right.
And those still exist.
Right.
They depicted historical things that happened, like the raising of the flag, the American flag after Spain ceded Natchez
Okay.
to the United States.
Okay.
And then there are others. There was a tableau for many, many years called Audubon, the dancing master. John James Audubon taught painting and dancing in Natchez.
Okay, right.
And it's kind of a celebration of the past coming to life with trained dancers and people in costume, and kind of like a living history
There
pageant.
is so much history in Natchez, and in my children's book, Meet My Mississippi, there's so many facts about Natchez. Like the first post office was in Natchez, the first post office in Mississippi, and
Right.
all those kind of lumber mill, first lumber mill, things like in Mississippi was
Right.
in Natchez. Okay, now we're going to go to your literary journey. When did you really know that you wanted to be a writer after, you know, you saw your dad and all that, but when did you really put pen to paper
Well-
and started writing? Like, was it in junior high, high school?
It was earlier than that.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
I'm going to tell you what I did.
Oh my goodness.
I got, probably dating myself, but I got a quarter, an allowance of a quarter a week. And back then, a quarter went a long way. When I was a little boy,
absolutely.
we had 5 and dime stores back then
Right.
where you could go and just buy a whole bunch of stuff. You know,
Candy.
kids would do that, you know.
Right.
And other boys, I think, were buying those marbles, cat-eye marbles, and playing. And I
yes.
did a little bit of that.
Yes.
But I would go to McCrory's or Woolworths.
Oh, love McCoy.
Remember that? And I'd go there, and for my allowance, I would buy those rule tablets
Okay.
and some Ticonderoga number 1 or number 2 yellow pencils.
Okay.
And I'd start writing my little stories in this tablet,
Uh-huh.
and I'd illustrate them.
You're
And I'd
kidding.
say I was about 8 or 9 years old when I started doing that.
Really?
Oh yeah, and so that told me, and it told my parents.
Oh my goodness.
I remember my grandfather saying, "This boy's going to be a writer the way he does all of these little stories
What
all
were
the
you
time."
writing about at 8?
Well, a lot of it had to do with my cousins that I grew up with.
Okay.
I had a very large extended Southern family.
Okay. Okay.
Like, let's just say 19 first cousins.
Oh,
And hey, I grew up with all of them, and they were like brothers and sisters to me.
Okay.
And in the South, that frequently happens.
Yes.
Sometimes you're closer to your cousins than you are your siblings.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so I would write stories about them
Okay. Okay.
and us playing together.
Okay.
And sometimes they didn't make a whole lot of sense,
But you were right.
but it was okay.
And Eudora Welty said we have so many wonderful Southern writers because we don't have to make anything up.
That's it.
Okay, so hey, within your family, you could write volumes.
And
And you did.
And I did. And something else that I did was when I got to the New York level of being published, first with Putnam and now with Kensington, I promised my family, I said, I am not going to air any dirty laundry. I
Okay,
promise you that.
okay.
And I have lived up to that.
Okay,
There are
okay.
stories every family can tell about siblings or aunts and uncles and grandparents, and some of them are not very flattering. So I keep that to myself.
Right, I hear you.
And I also work really hard when I create characters that have some relationship to real people to blend them. To either, I'll change their age or their
Right.
gender or their
Right.
race or their
they're
religion.
kinda
So,
unrecognizable.
exactly.
Even though people kind of say they might be, but it's blurred. So
That's
they
absolutely
know
right.
it's not.
And I'll tell you, when Grand Slam Murders came out in January, I did an event at the Natchez Library in
Okay.
February.
Okay.
And we had we sold about 75 copies.
Okay.
And room full of either my classmates or my friends or my relatives. And I had to make sure that I made eye contact with every one of them and say, I promise
This
you
is
that's
not
not
you."
you.
I love
That's
it.
not your mother.
Right, right.
That's not your brother.
Right.
And they all laugh
Right.
because that's important.
Yes.
People do like it if they think a flattering character
Yes.
is you,
But not,
but
when
not if it's a
oh,
villain
no, right.
and it reminds them
Right.
of something that happened in their life.
So if we could talk about your connection with libraries, because you have some books, a series of books that talks about library characters and things like that. So tell us your library background.
Well, before I did the mystery series that will continue for quite a few years, I had a day job to help pay the bills. Many writers, just like many actors, have a second job or really a first job to help pay those bills
Right.
until they start getting the contracts. So, now, not everybody can be John Grisham.
Right. We know
Everybody
that.
would like to, but you know.
Right.
So you have to be realistic. And I chose as my job to help support me to be a library vendor to public libraries throughout the
Okay.
South. And I sold such items as books on tape,
Okay.
unabridged audios, large print, small press, and so I made a lot of librarian friends
Right,
across the
right,
South.
Right.
And many of these librarians said to me, Rob, if you get published, and actually some of them said when, because they had a lot of confidence in me.
right.
They said, we will have you here for a book talk and signing, and they've lived
And
up to
they
that.
do. I'm telling you, every time that I look on Facebook, he's in
Someplace.
here, there, Louisiana, here, there, everywhere.
Atlanta,
Yeah,
Houston,
everywhere.
all over the place. And these librarians are loyal because
They are.
librarians,
I love librarians.
aren't
Don't
they
you love
wonderful
them?
people?
Yes.
They love writers, they know literature,
Yes.
they promote literacy. Their libraries are community resources.
Yes.
Different
And they're
groups
so
can meet there.
creative.
That's right.
Oh my goodness.
And people say, well, it's free. No, it's not free. We pay for that with our taxes, and it's part of the educational system.
It is.
And there
It
are
is.
companies that will look at a community's
Libraries,
educational
schools,
resources, the libraries, and
Yes.
see if this is a town that they would like to bring their workers to.
Yes, absolutely. So strong libraries are very important.
They are, and
Right.
I think the brick and mortar aspect is important too, because
is.
there is a sentiment out there saying, well, we don't really need the buildings anymore because we can download everything on our smartphones, and let's don't go there.
Yes.
Technology is fine,
Right.
but we really need to know that there is a place we can go to find out where we came from, where we are now, and that will continue to prepare us for the future.
Absolutely. I love that. Oh my goodness, you couldn't have said it better.
Preaching
Now-
to the choir, right?
Right, exactly. Now let's get to Grand Slam Murders
Mm-hmm.
and tell me about this. How did the concept of it, how the characters came about? I'm just so fascinated with
Thank
it.
you.
And the whole genre. To explain that genre of it. Too.
It is what is known as a cozy mystery.
Right.
And the cozy mystery was pretty much invented by Agatha Christie.
Okay.
Everybody knows Agatha's work, Miss Marple and Hercule Poirot. And in the cozy mystery, there's a civility and a politeness which was reflected in her reading, her writing rather. And although this takes place in contemporary Mississippi and not Britain, there is a civility to it, and the definition of a cozy mystery is you do not have profanity.
Okay.
You don't throw a lot of F words,
Okay.
GD words, any of that
Right.
stuff in there. You don't have graphic sexuality.
Okay.
My camera does not follow people into the bedroom.
Okay. Okay.
and you do not have a lot of blood and gore to
Okay.
turn people off. Some action thrillers do have that, and I'm not saying that that shouldn't exist.
Right.
It's just that there are rules for a cozy mystery, and it's for people who prefer something that's not quite as graphic and relies more on how can I solve this with my brain power.
Right.
So
Okay.
Grand Slam Murders came out of my idea that because Natchez is such a layered, quirky town, I might go ahead and visit my hometown for the first time. This is the first time I've actually had Natchez as the focus of my writing.
Okay,
My
okay.
first series took place in the Mississippi Delta.
Right.
My second series in a little town in northeast Mississippi that I made up
Okay.
called Cherico.
Oh, right.
And then I decided to call Natchez Rosalie in
Okay.
this
I love
book.
it, yeah.
Rosalie actually is an historical name for Natchez. The French founded it in 1716 and they called it Fort Rosalie.
And isn't there antebellum home there
Mhm.
called Rosalie? That's
Absolutely.
beautiful?
And Rosalie came from the fact that when the French founded it, Rosalie was the Duchess of Pontchartrain.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Then you're absolutely right. There is a grand mansion on the bluffs at Natchez,
Right.
which is called Rosalie.
Right.
It is currently owned by the DAR,
Okay. Okay.
and it is maintained by them, and it's no longer lived in, but it's kind of like a museum
Right.
of history, and of
Right.
course you would know that the DAR would take good care of it.
Right.
But Rosalie sounded to me like something that I could use. People would know it was Natchez, but it gives me that little bit of leeway
Right.
because it's a tweaked version of
Right,
Natchez. So people
okay.
can't say,
Right.
you said this and you said that, and I
Right.
say, people, it's fiction.
Right.
That gives me that little bit of leeway. So
Absolutely.
anyway, I decided that what I was going to do was create a group of 4 women who call themselves the Gin Girls.
Okay.
Not because they play gin,
Right.
because they drink gin. And that's very southern in old towns like Natchez.
Right.
People do drink.
Right.
And Natchez has been, as you mentioned before, wide open
Yes.
since its founding.
Forever.
I remember
Yes.
before we had legal option liquor laws in the 60s,
Right.
Natchez paid a black market tax to Jackson, to the state of Mississippi, to have its wide open bars. And to this day, Natchez has a Go Cup district. If you, it's kind of downtown and under the hill,
Right.
and there are little markers that say you are now leaving the Go Cup district, throw your drink away. Or if you enter it, it'll say you are now entering the Go Cup district. You can now carry your cup around with
whatever
you
you
and do
want
whatever you
to.
want to. French Quarter's like that
Yes,
too, you know, and that's
absolutely.
not typical of Mississippi
Right.
either.
Exactly.
But anyway, I decided that these 4 gin girls would be 4 young women who grew up together, kind of like the Yayas, the Yaya sisterhood,
Okay.
and they would go through life together.
Okay.
And they would be from the elite families, and so they would have a high opinion of themselves.
Okay.
They would all 4 go to Ole Miss together.
Okay.
Their motto was to raise hell in high school, raise hell in college, raise hell in marriage, and then raise hell in heaven. That was their motto. So you can imagine what kind of celebrities they became because they were hard-drinking, partying women from families that allowed them to get away with things that other people could not get away
And
with.
we know a whole bunch of those people. It's like
It's
we
not
know-
just
it's
in
not-
Natchez. No, it's
right.
not, you know,
We
it's
know those
pretty
people.
southern, you
Yeah,
know.
we
Yeah,
know those
we know those people, and sometimes we admire them, sometimes we
Right.
envy them, and sometimes we just don't like them.
Try
It
to
just
look away.
depends. Yeah, depends on what side of the
Right.
aisle we're on. But these 4 women do go to Ole Miss, then they come back. They all marry. All 4 of them marry wealthy men.
Okay.
So that kind of gilding the lily, you know.
Okay.
So then at some point during their lives, they all 4 of them lose their husbands to different things,
Okay.
car wrecks or disease. So they become 4 wealthy widows, and they
Okay.
amuse themselves by playing bridge.
Okay.
And they form what is called the Rosalie Bridge Club.
Okay.
Originally, it was the leader is Liddy Rose, and
Okay.
her intention was to expand it.
Okay.
But over the years, she really gets her nose up in the air and says, we don't want to dilute it. we don't want to dilute it. Nobody's as good as we are.
Now, what is your history with playing bridge and knowing bridge and a bridge club or whatever? Because you were saying something once about that your mom was in a bridge club.
That's right.
And you knew people. There was a big Natchez Bridge Club.
There are lots of people that still do play. But when I was growing up, my mother had 3 other friends, and they weren't the gin girls exactly, but they were 3 friends of hers, and the 4 of them would take turns playing bridge at each other's houses. They'd rotate it. But my parents taught me bridge when I was in high school. That's a good time to learn a game like bridge, just like the earlier you start learning a language, the better, because your brain is still not cluttered. And so I went to college and found 3 guys in my dorm who loved to play bridge as much as I do. Now here's something where the truth is stranger than fiction. These 3 guys in my dorm who I played bridge with were all named Steve. Now what are the odds of that?
Serious?
I am totally serious.
Come on.
And you know what?
You gotta write about all the Steves.
You can't use things like that in your fiction,
Right,
because your
right.
editor will say to
Yeah,
you,
right.
nobody would believe
exactly. That's
that
stranger than fiction.
3 guys named Steve and 1 named
Really?
Rob. And that's the truth. Sometimes you have to tone down
the real
reality, so people will accept it. But I kept on playing, and then a couple of years ago, in Oxford, where I live, I joined a wonderful bridge club. There are 35 members of it. They meet at the Oxford University Methodist Church. Some weeks we play twice a week. Sometimes we play once a week. And we have a wonderful time. It's party bridge. It's not duplicate bridge. So I kind of do have a love affair with bridge. It is good for people to be able to play a game like that. It keeps you alert, keeps you mentally alert, and I have visited some retirement homes and done talks with this book.
Yes, this is what I love.
And play bridge with these people.
Exactly. Some bridge clubs have kind of hosted you. Or
they have.
Play bridge, so I love that.
And it's probably the first time anybody sold books by playing bridge.
I love that. That is marketing to the highest degree. I mean, I love that.
Oh, well, that's a compliment coming from you, because you are the queen of marketing with your book, Meet My Mississippi.
I love that. And all these ladies of all ages, I mean, 90 years old playing, bridge.
They do.
You
And it's very inspirational, because you have to be sharp to play bridge.
Yes.
You have to remember a lot what's been played and all that sort of thing. So anyway, to get back to the novel, these 4 ladies, the gin girls, regularly meet to play gin. They have a bridge luncheon before they play. This is a very southern menu. They have chicken salad, tomato aspic, and baked custard.
What about the pear salad?
They could, with the cheese and the mayo.
Right.
Yeah, I know all about that. They decide they're going to have tomato aspic, and some people don't know what aspic is, but I grew up with it, and I've kind of been in some markets, some towns that are a little bit further north, and they'll say, "What is aspic?" And you tell them what it is, and they can't imagine.
Well, tell our viewers who don't know what aspic is.
All right, then. Aspic is savory gelatin. Instead of being sweet, it has. You usually make it with tomato juice or Bloody Mary mix. Little bits of celery. Some people put shrimp in it. My grandmother used to put a little core of cream cheese in the middle. And it's a very light, refreshing salad. You could actually, if you didn't want to eat a lot, just have that for lunch.
Now, one of your books has some recipes in it.
Does
Does this one have any recipes?
No, it doesn't.
Because the mistress on it.
It doesn't. You were referring to the Cherry Cola Book Club series. From Kensington, and that is about a librarian. And it has lots of southern recipes in the back of each book. But there are a lot of mentions of food in here, and I don't know, maybe eventually as this series moves along, we'll do some recipes as a supplement. But anyway, the 4 gin girls get together, they have their bridge luncheon, and they have a ritual that Ms. Liddy, the leader, has made up. They toast each other with coffee, little demi-tasse cups of coffee, after the luncheon and before they play bridge, to our success, And they've gotten together. Ms. Liddy says, we're going to win the duplicate championship in Jackson next year. I mean, next week. So they're going to practice to try to do their best to solve this Grand Slam hand that she supposedly has dealt them. So they get ready Liddy has two servants who been serving her for a while. The first is Merlise Maxique, and she is a long-suffering but very moral, hard-working cook, maid, and housekeeper.
Okay.
And she's kind of a saint as far as I'm concerned, putting up with the OCD habits of Ms. Liddy. And Merlise has to warm the coffee just to the right temperature and cool it down so they can just do a down-the-hatch coffee toast.
So what's the main wrap-up? What is the mystery here that we're trying to solve in this Grand Slam?
The mystery is
Wrap
that,
it up.
well, we're going to wrap it up right here. After they have their coffee toast, Merlise goes back into the kitchen, and the gardener is in there, and they're talking to each other. And all of a sudden they hear these gargled, throaty sounds, the breaking of crockery. And Liddy has a bell that she rings to summon Merlise, and she's ringing that bell real loud. The gardener and Merlise rush into the dining room, and all four ladies are in the throes of convulsions. The whites of their eyes are showing, their cheeks are bright red, they can't breathe, they're grabbing at their throats. So, cut to the chase, someone has put potassium cyanide in the sugar bowl that has been used to sweeten the coffees, and all four ladies are dead. They have been poisoned by someone simultaneously.
Oh my goodness.
Grand Slam murders.
Oh my
All
goodness.
four of them at once.
We gotta know.
And so at that point, the whole town is just horrified. You know, is somebody trying to kill all the widows?
Right.
Who could have done such a thing? And that's when we meet our heroine. And her name is Wendy Winchester.
Okay.
She's the society column for the local paper. She wants to do more. She wants to be an investigative reporter. And she had been allowed to study with the club to become an alternate. So she has a stake in the death of these four women. They were teaching her bridge.
Okay.
She's determined to solve it herself. Merlise, who actually stirred the sugar into the coffee, is the top suspect. But Wendy Winchester, firmly believes that she was set up by somebody. That even though she did it, she didn't know what she was doing.
Okay.
So the rest of the novel introduces you to all of these suspects who didn't like the Gin Girls.
Okay.
And Wendy works very hard because she and Merlise have become good friends. They have a wonderful relationship. One is in her 40s, one is in her 20s, one's black, one's white. But they have what I call a new millennium friendship.
Wonderful.
And I wanted to put that out there to show that that's what we need to work on anyway.
Oh my goodness, who wouldn't want to read this? It's just like now, it's just like we gotta know what happened. Oh my goodness, we love it. Where do we get your book? And what's your website? All that.
Well, I have a Facebook page under my real name, Robert Kuehnle, but in parentheses it says R.J. Lee.
Okay.
I also have another page that says Grand Slam Murders
Okay.
and R.J. Lee Mystery Writer on Facebook.
Okay.
There are copies, signed copies, at Square Books in Oxford, Reads in Tupelo, and you can order either the print copy or the ebook on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And local Barnes & Noble will probably also have copies.
Okay.
And Lemuria in Jackson also has it.
Okay. Wonderful.
And for our Mississippi readers, I think that's about it.
Thank you so much for coming.
Sure.
We're so excited to have you with us. Get this book, get all of his books, tell people about them, put them on your Facebook page, and stay tuned for other Mississippi authors and artists with Patricia Neely Dorsey. Thank you.
It's inside me, girl, it's in the air. It's who I am through and through. It won't take long till it